We need change. Ladies and gentlemen, within college football, I'm sure we can all agree on that. I've got a list of 5 things I would love to see change when it comes to the 2022 college football season. We've got the All-SEC national title coming up. That's going to be a ratings disaster. Nobody's going to watch it. There are reports that the frickin' Rose Bowl outdrew both of the playoff games, which is just horrible for college football. But let's get into it. 5 things to change for 2022 or maybe 2023. I understand all 5 of these things will not get implemented in this upcoming year, but these are just 5 things that I would do to improve the sport. Starting with number 5, you need some sort of regulation in the name, image, likeness rules, transfer portal. You know, we've heard a lot of people saying it's the Wild West out there. It is the wild, wild West when it comes to name, image, likeness, things like that. You've got a lot of Texas A&M fans saying, oh, this is how it was done every single year, which is completely false. Texas A&M has never had a recruiting class close to this good. They've never finished number 1 in their history of recruiting, yet now they have the best class in history, and their fans saying, oh, this happens every year, it's just legal now. This stuff was never happening. Sure, some kids got paid, but you've got, people on Texas A&M message boards saying they paid about $20 to $25 million for their class. You've got all these boosters writing contracts to these kids. It's a complete mess. There's zero leadership. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but there needs to be some sort of regulation within the name, image, likeness rules. The kids wanted to get paid. They're getting paid now. The kids wanted to transfer and not have to wait a year. Now we've got the transfer portal. We've actually got a kid transferring to a different school, decommitting from that school he was transferring to, and then committing to another school. Dylan Gabriel put his name into the transfer portal, said he was going to UCLA via the transfer portal from UCF, decommitted from UCLA, and now he's going to Oklahoma. It's getting ridiculous, folks. And when it comes to these kids getting paid, I know a lot of old white people on ESPN are making a big stink. Oh, these kids deserve to get paid, whatever. That's fine. I'm fine with a freedom to do whatever you want. If you're worth a certain amount of money, you should get paid. That's fine. Capitalism, I agree with it. That's fine. But it's just like, have we stepped back to actually think maybe giving an 18-year-old kid $100,000, probably, it might not end well. Okay, let's be real. It might not end well. I'm not saying don't pay the kids, but I'm just saying this idea where everything becomes better because the kids are getting paid. Yeah, let's give a 17-year-old kid $200,000. Maybe he'll invest it into Bitcoin. Maybe. We're lucky if he does that. Chances are he's probably going to do something a lot worse, and the money's going to end up hurting his life. Not saying that's going to happen to every kid, but you're giving immature kids. I was immature at that age, 100%. I'm still immature. Giving these young kids 6 figures sometimes isn't going to end all well, but all these people on ESPN, all their talking points, you're greedy, you need to let the kids get paid. I understand, let the kids get paid. I'm just saying sometimes you see some negative consequences from these kids getting paid. I've never seen anyone bring that up on ESPN about, an 18-year-old kid getting $100,000. These kids are not fully developed. They're not going to make smart decisions with their money. Let's be real. I wouldn't have made smart decisions at that age. Let's be real about it. So number 5, there needs to be some sort of regulation. Some way, somehow, you've got Texas A&M boosters running around paying $30 million for their recruiting class. Come on, folks. This is ridiculous. Let's get some regulation going on there. Number 4, change the overtime rules back. No sudden death 2-point conversions after the second overtime. And then in parentheses, touchdowns should be worth less, and so should field goals in overtime. And I'm going to explain this. But number 1, changing the overtime rules was a complete overreaction to one game, the Texas A&M LSU game. I'm sure you guys remember it. Back, the final score was 74-72. It was Joe Burrow's first year with LSU. The game never ended. We understand it, but 99% of games are resolved within the first 3 overtimes. Somebody goes for 2 and doesn't get it. Somebody gets stopped and misses a field goal. I don't have a problem with the idea of starting on the opponent's 25-yard line, but now what I would also change is if you're starting on the opponent's 25-yard line and you score a touchdown, why should that touchdown be worth 7 points? You got to make it worth less because, for instance, that game that ended 74-72, that game wasn't that high scoring. It got to that point because the teams kept starting on each other's 25-yard line. You shouldn't be able to get 7 points for that. You guys know what I'm saying? So make the touchdown worth 2 points. Let's say we're going into overtime and the score's tied at 28 and Texas A&M has the ball. They score right from the opponent's 25-yard line. We're doing the overtime rules. They get 2 points for that. Now the opponent, let's say the opponent's Arkansas, they scored. Now we're tied at 30. You guys understand what I'm saying? Why is it worth 7 points if you're starting on the opponent's 25-yard line? It artificially inflates scores. Scores. They changed the overtime rule because of one game. You should not go to sudden death after 2 overtimes. 99% of games are going to get decided anyway. Somebody's going to go for 2. Somebody's going to throw an interception. Somebody's going to miss a field goal. This is college football. We don't need sudden death after just 2 overtimes. You don't need sudden death at all. Teams will start going for 2. They'll do whatever. The games will eventually end. And then let's stop artificially inflating the scores. If we're starting on the opponent's 25-yard line, scoring a touchdown should not be worth 7 points. It artificially inflates scores, just like that Texas A&M LSU game that finished 74-72. You guys understand what I'm saying? The touchdowns, if you're going to start on your opponent's 25-yard line, need to be worth less. The field goals need to be worth less too. Don't artificially inflate scores. That's a new one, guys. I'm telling you, if you're starting on the opponent's 25-yard line, touchdowns should not be worth 7 points. Field goals should not be worth 3 points. You got to cut it down a little bit. Number 3, the targeting rule. It needs a ton of work. And what I would do is, I would say, I have seen so many times over the past 3 or 4 years where they're calling targeting over simple tackles. I would tell the referees, I would say, it has to be egregious to where you can tell the intent was to lead with the head. If that is the intent, throw the flag, eject the player, whatever. But we're ejecting guys for making tackles, and unfortunately, it's helmet-to-helmet contact. This is a contact sport. Sometimes there's going to be helmet-to-helmet contact. If there's accidental, or if the ref can judge that it looked like it was accidental contact, it's happened so many times where you can see it looks like the kid accidentally contacted, the player ducked down. Remember the Shaun Wade-Trevor Lawrence play? When Trevor Lawrence literally ducked his head to make it helmet-to-helmet contact with Shaun Wade, they still threw the 15-yard penalty and ejected Shaun Wade because Trevor Lawrence ducked down and then Shaun Wade hit him in the head, to where if Trevor Lawrence stays up, Shaun Wade is hitting him in the chest. And they still throw the flag. That needs to be eradicated. That needs to be changed. I would say, listen, it needs to be without a doubt intentional. If it is, I agree. The targeting, we don't want the helmet-to-helmet contact. We understand that. But it needs to be, without a shadow of a doubt, intentional. You always want to lean towards keeping the player in the game, because 99.99% of these kids are not headhunting. It's unfortunate that it's just ridiculous how some of these things are so obvious, to where the kid literally makes a great sack on 3rd and 7. They call him for targeting when the quarterback ducks down or something weird happens. That's a 15-yard penalty, automatic first down when that team would be punting, and the defender gets ejected. What is going on with there? We need to fix the targeting rule. It's ridiculous. I would tell the referees, if I was commissioner, I would say it needs to be without a shadow of a doubt intentional. Otherwise, don't throw the flag. Okay, if it is intentional, I agree. We need to limit the head-on collisions. I agree with that. But some of these things are ridiculous, folks. Moving on to number 2, get an actual college football commissioner. We need leadership. Absolutely. With the new name, image, likeness thing, with the idea of expanding the college football playoff, and you guys can probably guess what my number 1 thing that needs to be changed. We'll get to that in a second with the playoff expanding. But we need an actual commissioner, and all we're looking for is somebody that loves college football. That's all we want. We don't want a suit who's obsessed with money. We want somebody who loves college football, that wants to advance the game forward. We need some actual leadership, someone to actually set a narrative. It's so important in these sports to set a narrative. There is zero leadership. Everyone's doing whatever they want. The SEC is running rampant. They're running all over every other conference when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to these name, image, likeness deals, when it comes to boosters. There's no regulation. It's ridiculous. We need leadership. We need a college football commissioner that will lead us and that loves college football. That's all I'm looking for. We don't want some suit who's obsessed with money and things like that. We need someone who loves college football that's going to actually make it an even playing field. Leadership, we're massively lacking that right now in college football. And then number 1, my God, please, playoff expanded. All the New Year's 6 games mattered. We need immediately to expand to a 12-team playoff where the first 4 teams get automatically buys onto the second round. So it's still important to get one of those first 4 seeds. You get a bye onto the second round. Then you've got the 5 seed versus the 12 seed, 6 seed versus the 11 seed, 7 seed versus the 10 seed, 8 seed versus the 9 seed. And all of the New Year's 6 games matter. They all get thrown into there. We get no opt-outs. We don't have a Rose Bowl situation where you've got 2 receivers like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson opting out of the frickin' Rose Bowl. We don't have a Peach Bowl scenario where we've got Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker both opting out, the 2 best players. No more situations like that. We cannot afford it. These kids, they need meaningful games. All of the New Year's 6 games become extremely meaningful because it gives you a chance to move ahead in the bracket and compete for a national title. Every New Year's 6 games becomes meaningful if the playoff gets expanded. That is the clear number 1. I cannot believe that there are still people arguing against expanding the playoff. No matter what argument you use against expanding the playoff, what happened in the Peach Bowl? The 2 best, it became meaningless. A New Year's 6 bowl game became meaningless this year because the best player on Pittsburgh didn't play and the best player on Michigan State didn't play. What argument are you going to use to keep the playoff at 4 teams? It has to be expanded. Now, if everybody was playing and all the New Year's 6 games held the same weight that they did 5 or 6 years ago, you could have an argument competitively to keep it at 4 teams. The problem is we're evolving. All of these kids are saying the game is meaningless if I'm not playing for a national title. So all the New Year's 6 games that aren't the playoff semifinal games are becoming meaningless and kids aren't playing in them. They're protecting their draft stock. You have to make these games meaningful. You have to react to what the kids are doing. The kids are sitting out. You have to expand the playoff to make sure the kids have something to play for. That's why all the New Year's 6 games should become meaningful. That's why we need to expand the playoff. And again, I also saw something where the freaking Rose Bowl got better ratings than both the playoff semifinals. Does Ohio State and Utah just have that big of brands? Like, seriously? How is the Rose Bowl getting better ratings than the playoff semifinal games, folks? There's something wrong with that. There is something wrong with that. That just shows you that these semifinal games are ridiculous and something needs to change if a meaningless game is getting more ratings than the actual playoff semifinals. Come on, folks. Those are 5 things you guys can take a look at. If I could only implement one of these, it would be the playoff getting expanded. That's code red. That needs to happen immediately. I'm sorry, people say, well, we need to stay at 4 teams or just go to 8 teams. No, we need to go to 12 teams. The players are sitting out. You have to make these games meaningful. The problem is, you look at all the other sports. NFL, like 14 teams have a chance to win the Super Bowl. College basketball, March Madness, 68 teams, if you include the first 4, have a chance to win March Madness, the NCAA championship. MLB, 14 teams in the playoffs. NBA, it's like 16 teams. College football is the only sport where the postseason is so small and really only 3 games are meaningful. The 2 playoff semifinal games and the national championship. If you want more ratings, you want games to matter, you expand the playoff. You add games that matter. All the New Year's 6 games matter. No kids are sitting out because they have a chance to play for the national title this year. Yes, there probably will be players sitting out the other bowl games, even if you expand the playoff, but there's really nothing we could do about that unless you want to give them some sort of tournament too. Even then, though, if they're not playing for the national title, I think those kids would sit out. People are trying to argue we need to stay at 4 teams. There was an argument 5 or 6 years ago when kids weren't sitting out of other New Year's 6 games. There's no argument now. There's no argument. The New Year's 6 games are meaningless. The Peach Bowl was meaningless. You've got Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson sitting out. You've got Kenny Pickett sitting out. You've got Kenneth Walker. The games are now meaningless. You have to do something to make them meaningful, to make these kids want to play in these games. And the only logical explanation is expanding the playoff. Those are my top 5 things. Hopefully they get implemented by 2023 or 2024 at the latest, guys. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.